Hey. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry it took so long. As I said in my last video, I quite literally hate editing on computer, so I just didn't make videos at all. But it's all good now. I have a bunch of free time, a new phone, and new projects to reveal. Yeah, it's not as good as it sounds. Anyway, this is something a bit different. As said in my last video, we're now getting into the new continuity of Ground Zero. If you didn't know, after Ground Zero The World got released, LP took a long break from writing. After that, he started writing again. But it wasn't on paper. No, that'll be too easy. It was on Archive of Our Own. Now wait, calm down. AOV isn't as bad as people say, I promise. But I've been stalling for as long as I can. Let's just get this over with. Welcome to the Ground Zero Early Days review, and welcome back to my channel. Man, it feels good to be back. Anyway, chapter 1 starts with two little girls running up to their father in the morning. These two little girls are Zeri and Zara Monahey, and the man is Cassidy Monahey. If you couldn't tell, this book is a rewrite of Ground Zero Before the Storm, and as someone who's read both, Early Days is far better written than Before the Storm is, as Before the Storm was made in LP's early writing career. What I like about this is that the characters are so much more fleshed out, and relationships are so much more deep. You'll see what I mean later. Anyway, Zeri and Zara ask Cassie if they can go wake up their little brother Zero. Cassie says yes. Zara tries to wake him up softly, while Zeri just shouts and Zero wakes up. Now, young Zero is a much different character in Early Days than Before the Storm. Two of the biggest changes is that he's mute and he's, I think, autistic. I think the story handles it pretty well. I actually like Zero more like this than the crybaby he was in BTS. Anyway, Zeri, Zara, Zero, Cassidy, and Zayla, the siblings' mother, are all having breakfast. Zayla asks Zeri and Zara how they slept, but completely glosses over Zero. Zeri has to remind her mother to say something. Zero seems indifferent to it though, and just slides from the table. Zeri and Zara follow him and make sure he's okay. On to chapter 105, and don't worry, I'll explain the 1.5 chapters never. This chapter is basically just showcasing how Cassidy and Zayla aren't really that close with Zero. Zero's crying in the kitchen, Zayla and Cassidy literally can't calm him down, and Zero comes back home from school and he immediately waddles over and Zero calms him down immediately. On to the next chapter. Yeah, if you couldn't tell by the title, Zayla and Cassidy are terrible parents, at least when it comes to Zero. The chapter starts off with Zeri yelling at her mother because her little brother is extremely sick, to the point of hospitalization, and Zayla didn't even notice. And later in the hospital, Zero literally asks the doctor on a notepad if his mommy and daddy love him. It's actually kind of mental. And even later than that, Care, Zayla and Cassidy's good friend and Kami and Greer's mother, even scold them for being so neglectful when it comes to Zero. It's pretty sad, man. And in chapter 2.5, it's just a flashback of Zeri having to feed a baby Zero because Zayla's too hammered to do it herself. Mind you, Zeri's not too much older than Zero, maybe only about 4 years. It's actually kind of crazy. Anyway, next chapter. The chapter starts off with Zayla and Cassidy getting a spit spicy, and Zayla suddenly yells Roneo's name. Cassidy looks down to see their shark-toothed little son staring up at them, confused. Cassidy picks up his son and brings him back to his room. Just as Cassidy's about to leave, Zero speaks for the first time in this book, asking Cassidy to stay. Cassidy pauses, hesitates, then wishes his son a good night before eventually leaving. Now, what I love about this is that it specifically stated earlier that Zero has laryngitis, making it almost impossible for him to speak. This is shown in Zero's dialogue. It's broken, messy, and hard to read. And it just sounds like it hurts to speak overall. After the page break, we skip to a scene where Zayla is trying to tell Zero that she loves him, but she is quite literally incapable of saying the words. Not to mention, she has a panic attack because Zero looks like her dad, which will be very, very funny when we move on to Ground Zero Reforged. Zayla goes into the kitchen to talk with Cassidy, who calms her down, and Zayla's reaction was so bad that Zero felt the need to go into the kitchen and apologize to her using his voice. Mind you, it causes Zero's pain every time he uses his voice, so just think about that every time he talks when he's this age. In Chapter 3.5, we just see Zayla and Cassidy yelling at Zero to go upstairs. Zero is trying to use sign language to explain his side, but they're not listening. Zero eventually screams that he hates them and then stomps upstairs. Next chapter. You knew this was coming. I knew this was coming. But the Monahee family sure did. Chapter starts with Zara and Zeri talking about how depressed Zero has been. Rightfully so. But before they can say anything else, Zayla comes barreling through the door, bloodied and tattered. Zeri and Zara ask what happened and where Cassidy is, but Zayla apologizes and says that she couldn't save him. Before they can even process what happened, the house is... Haven't we done this before? I like how this is played out in early days more than it is in Before the Storm. I feel like it's more shocking to have Cassidy's death and the Monahee family devastation be in the same chapter, instead of it being stretched out between 2 chapters. Anyway, this happens the same as BTS. Zayla sends Zeri and Zeri away and then collapses. But instead of the story following Zeri and Zeri after they're teleported away, we get an added scene of Zayla slumping against the wall and then mocking a figure who then drives a spear through her chest while apologizing. This guy will be important later. Anyway, we fast forward 3 years and are following a very important character named Greer Evergarden, a 22-year-old guildmaster, walking through a forest when she finds a battered 7-year-old boy. That boy is Zero. After the page break, we're introduced to her younger sister of 2 years, Comrie Evergarden. They're talking about how Greer found Zero in Diamond Forest, and then they argue about adopting him. Comrie says she can't adopt him because she's only 20 and has a reputation to uphold, but Greer argues there's no adoption center in this region, and the foster system genuinely sucks. So, Comrie finally agrees after holding him for only a moment. In Chapter 4.5, it just shows Comrie is adjusting to being a mom, which is actually pretty well. On to the next chapter. This chapter really isn't anything special, but it's cute. As stated in the title, it's just a chapter showing a Comrie being a mom and the two getting closer over the years. Zero even uses his voice to call her mommy one time and make her cry. In Chapter 5.5, it's about the same thing. Yeah, told you. Anyway, next. Our first POV chapter, and it's Zero's. We follow Zero as he's talking about moving to this new town and how it's his birthday. Oh, and Zero loves to play his guitar too. Comrie got one when he was little. Comrie and Greer drag Zero out to meet the neighbors, which include the father Rex, the mother Heather, and the daughter Sky. Yes, Sky's parents have names now. Also, they're fairies. I can explain every race in detail like I did before, so here's the little chart I made, which just goes over the basic information of each race. It should give you a good rundown. Got it? Good. Anyway, Zero is introduced as Comrie's adopted son, and Heather has her daughter show Zero around. While Sky is showing Zero around, she asks Zero where Zero's dad is since she didn't know Miss Comrie had a son. Zero blankly says that his dad and his birth mom are both dead, causing Sky to pause. She throws out an apology before she starts to open Zero's mouth forcefully to look at his sharp teeth and his mismatched purple and pink eyes. But she's stopped by Rishi, a wingless fairy who won't get properly characterized until much later. Anyways, we're then introduced to another character and another big change, Moon, or Hero if you guys want to call it from the last video. Now, Moon is described much differently here than in BTS and Ground Zero. Whereas BTS Moon was described as being similar to Zero's size and stature and a bit above Zero in height, Moon is now extremely small, shorter than Sky, and is extremely feminine looking. Moon is also much more sensitive and sweet in ED, wearing his emotions on his sleeve regularly. Zero instantly falls in love, mistaking Moon for the prettiest girl he's ever seen, before Sky says that Hero is actually a boy. Chapter 6.5 isn't really important. It's just Rishi asking Sky how she feels about Zero, and Moon how Zero feels about him. Sky talks about Zero like he's a puppy, while Zero talks about Moon like he's the best thing since Marvel Rivals. Anyway, on to the next chapter. Zero follows Sky through school as she playfully teases him about his nervousness, which stems from never having been in a public school before. Sky's teasing gets so incensed that Zero's hands burst into rare blue flames from his Azure pyrokinesis, embarrassing him to the point of tears. Kamari later comforts him about it. Things get worse when Sky shows up at his house with a picnic basket. Kamari, like me, isn't much of a fan of Sky. Sky and her chat for a bit. She gives Kamari her phone number for Zero, and then she leaves. In chapter 7.5, it's just Sky being in disbelief that she actually likes Zero, calling him an adorable dork. We also meet Sky's big brother, Ash, who adores her after he comes back from a 6-long break wherever he was. Ash and Sky's sibling dynamic is much more warmer than it was in BTS. Instead of just tolerating each other, they actually seem to adore each other in this book, which I kinda like. Anyway, on to the next chapter. In this chapter, Moon takes Zero to meet his mother, Midnight, an outgoing, extroverted woman who loves teasing her timid son. After meeting Zero, Midnight remarks that Moon never brings home nice guys, making Moon whine in embarrassment. Midnight quickly becomes a favorite character of mine, by the way. Later, Moon convinces both his mom and Zero for Zero to spend the night. At dinner, Midnight unknowingly touches a nerve by asking about Zero's family. Zero gets upset and locks himself in the bathroom. In chapter 8.5, Kamari comforts Zero and Midnight apologizes. Next chapter. This chapter starts with Zero sitting cross-legged on his living room floor with 3 gifts before him. A pendant etched with his adoption date on it, a handwritten poem, and a childhood illustration of him and Kamari. These are for Kamari, just to say thank you for everything she's done. And when she gets them, she cherishes them deeply. Later in class, Zero drifts into a daydream until the teacher calls on him. Eyes turn his way. He answers the question correctly, gets a light scolding, and the lesson resumes. In the cafeteria, Zero is being comforted by Moon and Sky when 2 girls come over and kiss Zero on the cheek, causing his pupils to turn into little hearts. The girls giggle that Sky was right, causing Moon and Zero to shout at Sky that she told them Zero's secret. As Zero contemplates dying, Moon chases Sky around. In chapter 9.5, Sky's big brother Ash comes back, and you get to see just how close these two are. It's cute. Anyway, next chapter. This chapter starts with Sky happily revealing that Ash is back in town, and that makes Zero upset because it reminds him that his own big sisters are gone. Later, Sky invites Zero over to make sure there's no bad blood. They're joined by Ash,
who begins to tease Zero about Sky, making this already awkward situation even more awkward. After a situation where Zero is overworking herself, Sky and her family, Moon and Zero and his family are all at the beach together. They all do beach shenanigans, and that's basically it. Chapter 10.5 is just about Comrie coming to terms that Zero has friends and is spending less time with her. Yeah, ever since I learned how to summarize, these chapters have gotten much more bearable. But I think that's where I'll end this. I didn't want to split this into 2 parts, but I have a bunch of IRL stuff going on. I get part 2 out as fast as possible, then I'll delete both parts and combine them into one video. Well, I won't keep you any longer. I'll see you in the next video. Just remember I love you all, and have a good day.